Although I still work as a publisher all over the world, wherever I am, and writing as well. But I love Cornwall, I always have done. When you're brought up here, you always come back.
Right, so you're a Cornish maid.
I am.
Yeah. And you are a writer and a publisher. Publishing came first?
Publishing came first, yeah. I went up to London, took a degree there and fell into publishing by mistake. Ended up as J.R.R. Tolkien's editor. And
Sorry, just stop. Can I just say that again? You ended up as...
Yeah, no, I published Tolkien for about 15 years. Not while he was alive. I'm not quite as old as that.
No, you're not. No, I was going to say, but... So that's a major feather, all right?
Yeah.
But you're also telling me about another major feather, which please, in your words.
Well, I now publish George R.R. Martin, Game of Thrones author, so that's quite a full-time job in itself. And several other fine authors as well, like Robin Hobb and Mark Lawrence and Jonathan Friedland from The Guardian, who writes as Sanborn, and Dean Koontz. So I have a stable of fantastic authors, but obviously George R.R. is the one that everyone knows.
Yes, but you also threw out some other names there that are also very well known. I'm sorry. We'll come back to the book and we'll come back to you. How does the process work? Do people approach you? Do you approach them? Are you now so well known that you don't have to bother?
I wish. Well, I started out as a very, very junior editor, and I built up a list and a reputation. But it took. I mean, these things don't happen instantly. It took about 20 years, really, to get to that point where people came to me. Before then, you're the one who's out there scouting out new talent. But it takes a while to build up an author to the sort of level of fame that somebody like George R.R. has now. And obviously that's not just because of the books, that's because of the TV.
Yes, yeah. I mean, yes, there's a whole area to talk about there about... Is it lucky break? Is it planned? That kind of stuff. And actually, a friend of mine who's in America actually worked on the television publicity side of things. So I had an insight before the thing was released on TV what it was going to be. Pretty amazing. Now we'll come to your book, Jane. But first, we've got Debbie sitting there because you're amazing too. I mean, you're doing amazing things. So, Debbie, tell us where do you live? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I also, like Jane, worked in London for a number of years. I mean, that's really how we know each other originally. I used to be head of children's books for Waterstone's head office for a long time, so buying Harry Potter and organising all the midnight launches and things like that. But since then, I've gone up north, where I come from, in Preston, and set up an MA publishing at the University of Central Lancashire, and decided the only way to train students was to properly in publishing was to actually set up a publishing house and to do it for real. So we've gone from doing fairly small books, although we've worked all over the world in Kenya and Greenland and other places like that. And then just coincidentally, Jane agreed that she would come to us for this book. Which, as far as I know, is the first that a student-run, student-led publisher who's not-for-profit has published such a big-name author such as Jane, and we're absolutely thrilled and honoured to have her on our list.
This is amazing. I mean, I'm holding the book here, guys. I know it's radio and it's not television, but the book is beautifully produced. Really is. And I love the idea of what you said about the best way to do it. Teach it is to do it, so set up a publishing company sounds the best way to do it.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, Jane, now we've got to talk about the book. I'm holding in my hands this wonderful hardback book, limited edition, signed by the author, which I think they're allowing me to keep. If not, I've said it on air now, so if you don't, but the image, first of all.
Well,
right?
I'll let Debbie talk about the image because she commissioned it. So.
You commissioned the image. Okay, the image tells me what it is. I didn't need to read the back of the book. I kind of got a sense of the place and location in front of me. So can you describe the image, or can you talk about the artist? Because that's local too.
Yes, the artist is local. I mean, I have been coming down to Cornwall for a number of years, and that's where I met up with Jane again. But I do know Noel Butowski, who is the illustrator of the cover. I was actually in his house because my husband plays gypsy jazz with him, because he's also a very famous musician. And I was just looking at that image on the wall, and I was thinking, do you know what? That would make a fantastic cover for Jane's book. It was very evocative and also very textured, and I wanted a beautiful textured cover, and I think that's what we've ended up with.
You have.
So it was just nice as well that he was local.
Yes. The image, it's difficult for you to see on on the radio because you can't see it, but it is actually the mosque pillars, isn't it?
Yeah, it's domes and minarets. You know immediately you're in the Middle East when you see a cover like that, with a beautiful pink gold sunset behind it and a sort of blue cover all around. So the colours are really lovely.
See, that's why she's an author. Notice the way you use the words there of the cover. So let's talk about Pillars of Light. Your book.
Well, I've been writing for a long time now, but people here will know me best for the novel called The 10th Gift, which was about the Barbary pirate raids on Cornwall, and how I lost an ancestor in that raid in 1625, who was taken and sold into slavery in Morocco. So I went off and I researched that, and in the course of my research there, I met my husband Abdel. And we have now just celebrated 12 years of marriage. So I spend half my life in a Muslim country in Morocco with him, and he comes back here with me during the summer. Of course, we're there during the winter, which works rather well, though I fear we're not going to miss Storm Brian tomorrow.
No.
But as a result, I've become really interested in Muslim culture and architecture in particular. And what happened with this book was I was sitting up late one night, editing, probably, because that's usually what I'm doing, and out of the corner of my eye I had an Open University programme on the TV, and I just looked up and I saw this image and I thought, oh, that's the Great Mosque in Casablanca, which I'd visited. And then it said, oh, this is Salisbury Cathedral. I went, oh, hang on. How could I get it that wrong? But that really interested me, and I thought, why did I make that connection? Because sometimes when your brain makes those strange leaps, you've hit something. And so I started doing a bit of research and reading around, and it's what authors do. We spend an awful lot of wasted time on the internet, following up leads and red herrings and all that sort of thing. And I found out that actually the building of Gothic cathedrals rested entirely, literally, upon the discovery of the ogival arch, which is that pointed arch in Islamic architecture. And so the only way that the Gothic cathedrals that we all know and love, all those soaring, glorious spaces which are full of light, could ever have been constructed was because of the knowledge coming from Islamic stonemasons, and that happened during the Crusades. And so I was off and running or down this path at this point. So this book starts out at St Michael's Mount, the monastery as it was then. And we go all over England and end up in Wells and Glastonbury. And it's about the construction of Wells Cathedral and about the Third Crusade. So we go from southern England all the way across to the Holy Land, and to the Third Crusade, which was at Acre, which was the huge siege of Acre, and an enormous war story. And I started writing this in 2011, which was just before the current Syrian war broke out. So it's strange sometimes as a writer how conjunctions like this take place. But I ended up writing about siege and war and privation at the same time as people were literally horribly suffering in Homs and Aleppo. And sometimes I just couldn't write. It was just too close to the truth. But it's had a long journey, this book. There was so much research to do for it. But it's a book I'm really proud of. If people have read Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth, this is sort of a companion piece, but sort of filling in that missing link, which is that Islamic stonemasons actually built our cathedrals for us. And they found Arabic markings up in Salisbury Cathedral, in Wells. It's quite extraordinary. It's not something we talk about.
There's two things that strike me immediately. One, we mentioned in the break about, history keep repeating itself, and why haven't in several thousand years, humans being learned to get on with each other. But there is also this weird sense of irony about the sort of Islamic stonemasonry being in the Christian churches because of the Crusade, and that's a deep irony that
it's mind blowing.
It is.
I mean, it blew my mind at the time. I thought, how can this be? You know, there we are demonising these people, and going to war with them and slaughtering them in their thousands and hating them. And yet, there they are engaged in this creative process to the glory of a shared God.
Yes, because it's an Abrahamic tradition anyway, isn't
it?
Exactly.
And so, you know, we are all people at the end of the day. And this is always what I write about in my books, is the interface between Christianity and the Muslim world, and how actually that we have so much more in common than we do, you know, differences.
Definitely. And one of the things that I find amazing is I'm particularly interested in certain parts of what we're talking about, but the fact that the Islamic world, or the ancient Islamic world, was the heart of science and discovery. Everything we know about chemistry and what was then alchemy comes from that part of the world. Those writings were then reinvented and re-celebrated during the Renaissance, and they were never given the honour of the tradition where they came from.
Exactly. And indeed, if there hadn't been geometry, and that came out of the Arabic fascination with the ancient Greeks.
Definitely.
And then we certainly wouldn't have had any of our modern architecture at all, because all those geometric patterns are the things that actually hold everything up.
Yes, that's right. Definitely. And we could talk forever about this kind of notion of masonry and sacred geometry, all that kind of stuff. But there is that direct route back to those peoples at that time. And I just, in my head, I find it really difficult how that divide happened. What was it that caused that divide between the Islamic world and the Christian world in particular, and at that time during the Crusades?
Well, Jerusalem, I guess.
I suppose so. It was that city, wasn't it, and King David.
It meant so much to both peoples that as soon as you have neighbours, you fight.
That's a shame, isn't it? Because it's
terrible.
Such a sacred city in both of the traditions. Why can't they just share it?
I know, absolutely. and you know, and then nothing's changed.
No, it isn't.
In all this time, 2,000 years, and we're still fighting over it.
Exactly.
Oh.
I read a book that was turned into a film a few years ago. I think it was called The Body or something like that. And it was actually the finding of Christ's body in somewhere near Jerusalem, and how the archaeologists' story was stopped digging because of all the political intrigue around the conflict. It's a great idea for a story, isn't it? Yeah.
Brilliant.
Because
this is also about the true cross.
Exactly.
So the true cross is a sort of major symbol of inside this book, and that exactly that happens.
Yeah.
You know, they're both in search of this iconic item.
Interesting. So the book, it's historical fiction. Is that how you describe it?
Yes, it is, yeah.
But there's a lot of heavy research has gone into creating that.
Yes, not a heavy book to read, though.
No. Well, you've just given it to me, and I just scanned, and I think, I could really get into this very quickly because it flows. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, it does. So the research is there, and I suppose when you write historical fiction, that's the biggest challenge, isn't it? Because there are going to be people out there who know their onions, as it were.
Exactly, and if, like me, you're starting from a point of knowing absolutely nothing at all, that you do write as if you've got them looking over your shoulder. And I think you actually do more research than if you think you know a bit about it.
True.
So I've got reams and reams and reams, and actually that's the problem, because you then have to sort of compress that. It's like a sort of compost heap.
Yes.
You keep piling it up, and it mulches down, but it takes a long time, and it's only the bit at the bottom that's useful, and you have to just sort of keep drawing it out.
And then on top of that, you have to create a story arc that works with characters that are interesting.
Characters are always the most important thing.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, you have to be caught up by the people that you're travelling with in a book.
Yes, definitely.
You don't have to like them, but you have to be interested enough in them as companions in a way.
Yeah, and in fact, sometimes if you dislike them, that works as well, because you want to see what happens.
There's nothing so much as fun as writing villains.
Exactly. So, okay, you have an event coming up.
Yes, tomorrow, in fact, at Edge of the World Bookshop, our wonderful bookshop in Penzance, at 7:00, and Noel Butowski and the gang are going to play some music.
Yes, we've got Noel and Pam, who are collectively known as Jazz Celtica. Some of Penzance occupants will certainly have heard of Jazz Celtica.
Definitely, yeah.
And they have actually done a unique set. So they've read the book and they've absorbed the book and where it's set and all the different places, and they've come up with a special set of music to play at the event, which is going to be the first time ever that's happened for them. They've been really enjoying it, actually. They've been doing this over the last couple of months, and they've been really, really enjoying the journey that they've been going on, just as there is journeys in the book.
Fantastic. So that's tomorrow night at the Edge of the World Bookshop, 7
o'clock. There's also sweet treats and wine.
And
if you need extra bribing.
Entrance fee?
Free.
Hang on. Sweet treats, fine. Wine, fine. Jazz Celtica, yes. But the book as well.
No, the book isn't free.
Well, no, what I mean. No, I don't mean that. I mean to talk about the book. That's what it will be about.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk a little bit, but not too much. It's all right.
No. See, tomorrow night, guys, get in your diary. Edge of the World Bookshop, 7 o'clock. For Pillars of Light, I'm assuming it's called the Pillars of Light book launch. Is there a snazzy title for it?
Yeah, there are flyers in the shop, and there's posters around various places people may have seen.
Fantastic, that's great. So it's then going to Waterstones, did you say, in London?
Oh, well, it's all over the place at the moment, but we are doing a launch at Foyles on Charing Cross Road, which is actually my first job. And I always swore I'd never set foot in there again.
Yes, you're going in differently now.
Rather differently, yes. Not working in a cash desk where I got locked in every day.
There's another book there, I think. That's great. I kind of love that cycle then, your own journey cycle.
But life makes patterns.
It does.
I do believe it does.
It does, I think you're right.
It's like with Lord of the Rings. When I became the Tolkien editor, I went with my heart. I followed it with such a passion. Ended up working on the movies, 15 years later. It's just, you can't make it up. You just have to keep following your heart and doing the things that you really care about, and then it makes patterns and life rewards you. I do believe it.
I want to quote you on that because I think that just is a beautiful summary about how to approach life and an attitude to living. Can I just read this little bit off the back here? Zorba, a young Muslim woman caught up in a siege, falls in love with a Jewish doctor, Nathaniel. So you really have got a conflict right there. I mean, you've got a conflict within the Third Crusade, but a conflict within the people. That's really enticing me to. And then, okay, I won't read any more because it will spoil it. Sorry, I can get. It's been great talking to you guys. I want to ask a technical question there for both of you as book publishers, whatever. If there was a budding author out there, right, and we've talked briefly about a lot of people go the self-publishing route because it appears to be easier, but you don't get the publishing house support and you have to do everything. And of course, it's probably not edited that well either. Which, if there was an aspiring author, what advice could you give them? I bet you get this question asked all the time, right? And it's a boring question for you maybe, but yeah.
Well, it's never boring. It's a fight. I'm just going to say that straight up. It's not easy getting published. But if you're determined and you are following it with your heart and you are absolutely determined, then you will just keep on fighting down that road. What you really need is an agent. If you want to be published traditionally by one of the big publishers, then you need a literary agent who is going to represent you and send your work out to all the publishers. But that's not the only route. And I think what Debbie is doing at the University of Central Lancashire is just so interesting because it's a different pattern of publishing.
Yeah. So would you mind elaborating a bit on that?
Oh, okay. So I suppose it's best to give an example because what we do is quite complicated. It's more collaborative publishing, normally what we do. So we take different sections of society, even across the world, and we try to publish their voice. So, for example, we've worked out in Kenya with the Maasai tribe, who don't normally have a voice at all. In fact, they don't really have a written language. So we took linguists with us to translate them and put their stories into English for the first time ever. And we took with us also student photographers and student linguists, a whole team basically we took out there, and then we published the book. which keeps on selling because I guess there isn't anything like it. And we did the same with the Inuits in Greenland, and then we did a book with the Sami people out in Norway and Sweden, who are the last indigenous tribe in Europe. And because they have lots of beliefs around the Northern Lights, we did a book about the Northern Lights and their beliefs around it being a fox's tail in the sky and all that kind of stuff. So that's the kind of thing that we normally do. This is a little bit of a departure for us. But we like departures. We like doing things very differently. So it's been great for the students to edit the book, to produce the book, to design it, to get involved in the cover, to get involved still even in the launch in Foyles, Charing Cross Road. A lot of them that worked on the book have left now, and they've got jobs in publishing. But they are still helping to organise the Foyles launch in London, because that's where they are, which is really nice.
It's that spirit of collaboration which I really think is so important, and it's not what we're doing in our society much this day. We compete very easily. Yeah. We collaborate much more difficultly in that. I think one of the reasons that David probably saw what your flyer or whatever and got you to come in is that he knows that one of my dictums, if that's the right word, is that we could change the world with 4 words, and those 4 words are tell me your story.
Oh, nice.
And I really believe that. I fundamentally believe that.
I absolutely think you're right. Because as soon as you talk to somebody, you find your points of contact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a book there somewhere. I'll write it one day. And I love what you were saying there about that you are going to these people who traditionally may not have a voice that can be translated into our language, if that sense, and you're telling their stories.
It was fascinating because when we took student team out there, including student linguists who normally have to study, I don't know, languages that have been overstudied, we were sat round a campfire late in the evening with a chalkboard, and the Maasai were arguing over how to write their language down because it hadn't been done before. And we were thinking, no, it must have been done before. And there was a book that was by some, I don't know, Christian person that had come along a long time ago, trying to write the language down. They were like, no, that's rubbish. And it was like 3 pages long anyway, so it was not that relevant. But we couldn't believe it was the first time they had ever been written down, and they were arguing about how to spell certain words, and it was just absolutely fascinating. It
is, and it's real magic actually when you turn that internal concept of what you're thinking into words which can then be shared in writing. That is a magic alchemical process in and of itself.
It's a bizarre thing, isn't it? We've just all decided that we will share symbols and that we have a word for that symbol. And it's a collaborative process.
Yes, it is. I've loved this. I'm really sorry that I didn't welcome you properly because, but now you're here. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Well, I'm just going to say that I wrote a book called The Salt Road about the Tuareg, who also have a lost language, which was never written down. They kept it alive from the Roman times, just as spells and inscriptions. But it is actually the native language of Morocco.
I've read that book.
The Berber. Oh, no, you haven't.
I have.
That's ridiculous.
And I didn't actually connect. Yes.
Oh.
It's a great book.
Oh, thank you very much. But you see, it's so fascinating. The language is fascinating because it is what makes us human.
Definitely. In wearing one of my other hats, I'm into something called neurolinguistic programming, so I'm an NLP trainer. So that very exploration of what we mean by what we say and what we say and what we mean is a really important part of the process of therapy and cognitive understanding. So when we get people like yourselves that are working with words and are wordsmiths, you are touching people in ways that transform. And I'm sorry, I'm getting waxing lyrical now, but
that's fine.
We're all getting overwhelmed
we
here.
are. So, one more plug: Pillars of Light, Jane Johnson, published by
UCLan Publishing.
Debbie Williams is here from them, and they will be at the End of the World Bookshop.
Edge of the World Bookshop, 7:00 tomorrow.
With
Noel Batowski, Pam Batowski, who are Jazz Celtica.
Fantastic. So there'll be wine and nibbles, but more importantly, you'll get to see some great music because they're very good, and be told about a brilliant book, which you almost go out and buy. And I'm going to go. I know what I'm doing this weekend. Thank you very much for coming in, guys. It's been
Thank you,
a
Alan.
pleasure.
Thank you very
Really, really, I need to play something like this now. Where's it gone? I'm so engrossed in what I'm saying, I've lost track of time.